When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Good morning out there in internet land. Episode 32 of Join Up Dots. I hope you're all right, and if you've just stumbled across the show for the very first time, welcome aboard, glad to have you. And also, where the hell have you been? We've had 32 episodes, you've missed some good stuff. Not really, you can go back and sort of pick it up wherever you want. Now, today is going to be a great show for us, because we've got a lady, and we're going to do something a little bit different on here, because she is an experienced and fully qualified and fully motivational peak performance coach. I'm not really sure what that is, but I'm going to find out by the end of the show, and so will you. So there's going to be an element of coaching that's going to be pushed out through the internet into your earbuds. So wherever you are, if you're sitting on a train, laying in the bath, still in bed, whatever, I think it's about time to get up actually. This is the show for you. So let's give you a little bit of an introduction about today's guest. She's a lady that has almost a lifetime of experiences built up already in her youthful body. Since her travelling adventure started over 4 years ago, she's covered the globe, observing the characteristics of the people who live in each of the countries she has spent time in. And it's not a surprise to her that whether she was living in the United States, Germany or Thailand, she found that we all want the same things. We want to be happy, feel peace, and have a freedom of suffering, whether this be fear, negativity or frustration. The only difference is how we go about getting to those results. So being a naturally adventurous and positive person obviously helps her enormously. But what about the listeners who don't embrace adventure and freedom of spirit in such a gung-ho way? Can we also achieve these positive results and take control of our own lives in the process? Well, our guest today believes so, and through her role as peak performance coach, has made it her mission to help others find the path to excitement and fulfillment that makes a life, well, memorable to say the least. So if you're wondering if there is more to life than you're getting at the moment and don't know how to go about it, then let me introduce to you the salsa dancing, fun-loving, creative spirit that is Miss Ginger Kern. How are you today, Ginger?
Hi there, David. I am so well. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's absolute delight. And I do apologise. As I was saying the words Miss Ginger Kern, I suddenly, in my head, was thinking, oh my God, she might be married. I've insulted her already.
No, I am not.
So if you're not Ginger, why not? Why are there not people banging down your doors at the moment? So somebody being so positive, outgoing and salsa dancing should have them flocking to you, surely.
That's an interesting word that you would use, should, in that sentence. That actually speaks to what your conceptions might be about how a person of my age or my positivity should live a life. And I would argue that really it comes down to what I want. And if marriage isn't something that I want, then obviously it hasn't happened. So that would be the answer, wouldn't it?
It would absolutely be the answer. And I stand corrected totally on that one. So how is your life generally? So what actually is a peak performance coach?
Two different questions. I'll answer the first one first. How is my life generally? It's fantastic. I actually just moved to a wonderful new place, new location, Boulder, Colorado, about 3 months ago. And ever since then, I found myself feeling at home more so than I have in the past 3 or 4 years, which is an excellent feeling. And as to speak to what is peak performance, well, it's sort of a combination of feeling great on a daily basis, which is easy to do if you're in an excellent environment, and then also actively working towards that next level of yourself, whatever you envision that to be.
So let's get back down to your move to Boulder, Colorado. I was fascinated with the statement that you feel happier and sort of more content there than you've felt previously. Well, I don't know Boulder, Colorado. What's it like? What's the sort of vibe there?
Yeah, sure. So Boulder is nestled in the foothills of the Flatirons. They're mountains just before the Rocky Mountains. And it's basically known for progressive culture, a whole lot of sunshine, a large university as well, and so you have a pretty youthful population. And along with that, most people are very physically active. So you have a lot of healthy people living in a land full of sunshine, good air, and the mountains are close by. And I think for me at least, that's the perfect recipe for a very happy place to be.
Because I've been doing a little bit of stalking over the last week, Ginger, looking at your site and stuff. And I did notice that literally every picture of you is outside. It's either rambling along the top of a mountain top or in the woods somewhere. Are you a very sort of outdoor kind of lady?
It's funny that you should ask that, because if you had asked me that a couple of years ago, I probably would have said, oh, I like the outdoors. I actually love them, but I don't really want to live near them. And I was more of a city person. And now I know that was definitely a phase. And who knows, maybe this outdoorsy thing could also be a phase. But it's certainly what I'm enjoying right now. And in terms of cities, yes, you can have a ton of energy in them. You can thrive in them, absolutely. But as we'll see in our developing discussion, what I did was essentially decide what worked best for me personally. So I wouldn't say that, okay, you have to be outdoorsy to be happy. But I would say that for myself, it has made a huge difference. And yeah, I'd say I'm a pretty outdoorsy person now.
Well, I think so, because some of the mountains that you're sort of rambling across, you could fall and kill yourself on your website.
Well, I suppose you could fall and kill yourself really anywhere, couldn't you?
Well, you could if you stumble under a bus or something, but I think it's more likely that you're going to fall and kill yourself on these kind of cliffs that you're walking along quite happily.
Interesting. So I think you're getting at the concept of risk, perhaps.
Is there a concept of risk walking across the top of a mountain? Well, what's risky about it, first of all, other than obviously falling and killing yourself?
In the mountains, you have certain paths that are more dangerous than others. However, you don't have to take those paths if you're, aware of your level of experience. And if that doesn't match the path, well, then, don't take it. On the other hand, it might be a good little push for your comfort zone to take that little bit harder path. And in terms of risk, well, that's up to you to decide, right? If that's something that you want to go into or not. And I normally decide that, yes, it is something that I want to go into and have a little adventure along the way.
So how do you? I'm totally fascinated in this conversation, and we've only been going 7 minutes, and I feel like I've been told off a few times. I'll be honest, which is kind of making it quite interesting. I'm treading carefully with you, Ginger. But how do you know your level of risk? So you're out there and you want to sort of come out of your comfort zone, but how do you know that once you're in it, you're not going to be going, oh my God, this is too much for me, and mountain rescue is going to come for you?
That's a great question. I think it's a feeling more than anything else, and paying very close attention to my own physical limitations and knowing myself very well. So, of course, you have your comfort zone, and you could imagine it in terms of, concentric circles. You have your comfort zone at the middle, and then you have your reach zone, which is a little bit farther outside of that. And then you have your panic zone, and that's, I think, what you were referring to with the mountain rescue coming. And it is a fine line, but certainly you can always push a little bit out of that comfort zone into the reach zone before you get to the panic zone. And you're still growing and you're still challenging yourself physically and getting a great workout and enjoying the scenery as well.
So do people know what circle they're in? If you ask somebody, and I assume you ask this a lot, or you at least test them out when you are performing your role as a coach, and do the majority of people place themselves in the wrong circle?
I wouldn't say they place themselves in the wrong circle, but perhaps they're just unaware that there are circles. And when they go about their daily life and have a decision to make, whether they go this way or that way, and they're coming to that point where emotions are starting to come up inside of them, or maybe tension, because that always comes up on a physical level as well as a mental level, they might not know how to name what they're going through. And so they have a comfort zone. They just might not call it a comfort zone. They just feel like it's normal, in quotes. And to move more consciously into that reach zone, which of course is where the growth occurs, you have to sort of be conscious of it, right? So if you can name it, if you can name like, oh, there's a bit of tension here when I'm trying to make this decision. What's the best for me? Which path is right, so to speak? If there's a little bit of tension that comes up without causing panic, and I think that's really the key word, the panic, then go for it, perhaps. That's an interesting decision, right? Because you're going to learn from it, and you're not panicking. You're not going so far that everything shuts down, it's chaos, that sort of thing.
But the majority of people, I imagine, and I'm just sweeping statements. That's all I do here, Ginger. It's sweeping statements. But most people like to be in that contentment zone, don't they? They don't like to feel panic. Certainly, well, nobody likes to feel panic. But certainly the reach, most people aren't really aware of the need for reach until maybe they want to go for a promotion in their job, or they want to try something to sort of better themselves. But they come along at peak moments in their life. It's not something that you're constantly pushing against that circle into the next area.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. And yes, most people aren't necessarily pushing on a daily basis. But for those who are, it comes down to a question of really knowing what they want. And by that, I mean in all circles of their life, like holistically speaking, in the job sense, yes, as you mentioned, and then also in their relationships, or maybe in their physical fitness, or maybe their spirituality, to be exploring, to be curious, to be asking questions and pushing boundaries in little ways. Again, not going into the panic zone, but just exploring. It's a different mindset, and it takes a little bit of time to cultivate. But it's certainly worth it when a person does.
So let's take you back, actually, because the show is Join Up Dots. And so there's going to be some kind of progression to where you are now. As you said at the beginning, life's fantastic. You feel great. You're in Boulder, Colorado. You're running along mountain tops, and everything's going well in your life. But was there a moment, was there a dot in your life where you suddenly realized this is the path I need to go onto?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that if I compared myself of today to myself of a year ago, the change is extraordinary. And by that, I mean both in location, in level of happiness, and also in what I'm doing, of course, in terms of jobs, so to speak. So how did that change? Or joining up the dots, going back to that point a year ago, or even 2 years ago. Where was I? Well, the answer to that is I was actually in Germany, which I believe you mentioned at the beginning of the show. And what I was doing there was, at the time, fulfilling a goal of mine to live in Europe. And I'm sure you have identified with, at one point or another, wanting to live in a different place. A lot of people do. They imagine it. They think, oh, what might that be like? Or if only I could live on this island or in that country. And for me, that far off land was the continental Europe. So I had moved to Germany shortly after graduating from university, and was working both as an English teacher first and then in communications and publications. And after I had gotten through the learning process of learning the systems and tasks that were associated with the different jobs that I was doing, it came to the point where I started to ask myself, well, what is the purpose behind my work? Like, yes, I can have fun learning and experiencing new things. And of course, having the opportunity to travel around Europe was pretty cool too, because, who doesn't like Europe? But it came to the point of, okay, well, what is my impact on the world? And when I sat with myself and took time to answer that question, it boiled down to something that I wasn't particularly thrilled about. And when I think about my life, like, I'd really, really like to be thrilled about my life, like it's the only one I've got. And for me, being a person who delivers positivity in whatever I do, that became more and more important over the years. And so it really triggered the shift inside of me to say, okay, what do I want to do next? And specifically, where do I want to do it? And in the place that I was living at the time, a year ago, that was in Frankfurt specifically, which is an international city, and you can travel all over from it. It's a very transient city as well. So you have a lot of mixing of cultures, sort of reminiscent of what people think of when they might think of the United States. But it wasn't the place for me. And it felt like...
Why wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Sure. I'll definitely go into that.
Sorry, I jumped in. I was so into that story.
Excellent. That is perfect. So specifically, it was a place that was full of people who were into mostly finance and banking. And that's not to say that bankers and people into investments and things like that are bad people. Absolutely not. However, they weren't of the entrepreneurial spirit that I was finding within myself that was developing. And in order to cultivate that, I wanted to be around that sort of spirit. And that meant that, well, I had to confront the possibility of moving, right? So I started thinking, okay, where to next? And I was pretty certain I didn't want to stay in Germany anymore. And by that time I was fluent, so I had accomplished that goal as well. And I was thinking, okay, well, I could go to another new country, or I could go back to the States. That would be the easy route, so to speak, in terms of visa. And first, I listed a few characteristics of the place that I'd like to be in. So if talking about joining up dots, I was actually pretty strategic looking forward. And I thought to myself, okay, the characteristics I don't like about the place that I'm in or was in last year, a lot of it had to do with the weather, some of it with the mindset of general society around me. Some of it had to do just with the vibe of the city and the proximity to nature, because that was becoming more and more important for me. And so then I started thinking about places that did have those characteristics. And one of them came up as Chiang Mai, Thailand. And that was an entrepreneurial hub I had heard about from some friends who were also travelers or expatriates. And I started looking into it. And I did a little bit of Wikipedia research and things like that, and decided that that would be a pretty good place to start looking. And I had some time after finishing my contract in Germany, so popped over to Thailand for a bit, just for about 5 weeks, explored Chiang Mai and the surrounding area, and it did seem to fit very well. But I knew that I didn't want to stay abroad for very much longer, and at that time had already connected with certain people in Boulder who were selling me on it. They were really, really convinced that I would fit well there. And if I'm honest, David, I had never been there before. So I was taking a bit of a risk. I was taking a leap of faith. And I had done my research and things like that to find out if those characteristics that I liked about Chiang Mai were also present in Boulder. Those are the things that I talked about earlier. You know, you have the progressive culture, a lot of active, healthy people, sunshine, proximity to nature, and this entrepreneurial spirit was there as well. So Boulder is actually a hub for startups. And so I thought to myself, well, now or never. And hey, at least I won't have to deal with visas or work permits or residency permits. So I might as well give it a try. And that might as well has turned into a very, very good decision. So that's basically how I could join up the dots. And yeah, feel free to ask questions if you have them.
No, I've got so many questions. I've been scribbling down like a madman on that. The key thing to me on that, Ginger, is the fact that you actually sat down and you asked yourself a question, and you basically, it seems to me, came out with your unique self. And the words unique self seem to come out of every single conversation that I have when somebody realizes what they want to do with their life. And yours obviously was to do with entrepreneurship and being positive and coaching and all those kind of elements. Was it a realization that actually the 5-year-old Ginger had all those and the boundless energy? Because you seem like you must be bounding around Boulder all the time. Was it your unique self when you realized that this is my traits, these are my strengths, I've already got these, I'm already demonstrating it, now it's time to actually channel these into a career?
Absolutely. I would definitely say that, yes, the innate traits that I had as a child were showing up again and again in life. Those are things that even if they might get stifled through whatever hard situations a person is put through, they will still show up eventually. And that positivity and that spirit that I bring to whatever work I put myself into, that never really went away. It might have been dampened, sure, depending on the situation or the environment that I was working within, but it never went away. And so finding a place where all of these traits could really fully start to thrive, that's just capitalizing on the innate stuff that I already have. And I would encourage the listeners, anyone listening to this podcast, that if you start to ask those questions of yourself, what have I always been good at? Or what have I always tended to be pulled towards in terms of the type of people or the constellation within a working environment, whether you're more of a lone wolf type or whether you work better in small groups or whether you enjoy being in a supporting role. Those are all legitimate possibilities. But it comes down to knowing yourself and how you work and play best. And then as much as possible, moving toward those situations so that you in yourself, knowing yourself, can thrive fully.
It is fascinating though, isn't it? You know, this is episode 32 and we've actually recorded about 60 episodes now. And I'm sort of sharing them around in the order of release. But it is fascinating that actually we all pretty much know what we're good at. And for some reason or other, we don't. And I didn't. For years, I went into corporate land and I did jobs just for the money. And I pretty much hated it. And then I would do certain jobs, and I was a trainer for a long time. And the actual building a training course, I hated it. It was like pulling teeth. Give me the content and just get me to stand up in a room and do it. Brilliant. I could do that with my eyes shut. So really, I was playing to my strengths all the time. But you kind of forget it somehow. And it seems madness to me where if you look back on your life and you, as you say, you look at all the things that you can do well and you could do well as a young kid, that's your path, isn't it? That's your path already. But for some reason, we just let it overgrow and we forget it. Or we almost think it's too easy that we shouldn't know the answers before we actually sort of proceed into adulthood.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I would add to that is that so often we focus our energy and time on compensating for those areas where we might have weaknesses instead of focusing all of that energy on really pushing our strengths to the next level. Because if you have a baseline that's quite high in a certain characteristic or talent, then why not focus your energy on pushing that to be really top notch instead of maybe squandering that energy and trying to build up something that's such a low baseline to a mediocre baseline and then just frustrating yourself in the process.
I think the problem, though, is the things you do naturally well, you feel that you're not working. It's almost like you're playing. And you're not, because there's certain structure, there's certain responsibilities. You've got to get to a certain place in a certain time. You know, you've got all those kind of things that a career is built around. But when you're actually doing something that you feel that you're naturally good at, it's like this. You know, I'm sure many people are thinking the two of them are just having a chat and recording it. You know, and hopefully it comes across like that. But there's preparation, isn't there? There's preparation and there's research and there's all those kind of things. But it's still as close to playing as you can possibly get, which is what we enjoyed as kids. But we forget as we move into adulthood again. We just forget everything that we knew. And I don't get why that is. And you're going to teach me this, Ginger, because you're a peak performance coach. So why do we forget these things?
So here's a question, David. Why is it bad if work is like play?
I'm thinking of a really good question answer there. Why is it bad if it feels play? The only thing that I can think of, Ginger, is that somehow, for me, I've been brainwashed by a career in corporate London where you had to do incredibly long hours to justify your worth in the company. And so, you know, I used to travel for 2 hours up there, do 13 hours days, travel 2 hours back, absolutely exhausted, and go again the next day. Now I wander 15 feet to my computer and sit down. I think I've been kind of brainwashed to 25 years of doing that, now doing what I'm doing now and thinking, this is too easy. You know, somebody's going to find me here and just sort of say, come on, back to work, and sort of pull it off. So I think for me, it's a kind of almost I preconditioned myself to the slog. and now I'm not slogging in those same degrees, I feel like I'm not worthy somehow. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I guess it comes down to the question of value. You said that to be valued within that company, you had to work those long hours. And if, for instance, I'll just put this out there, if you could create value from what innate talents you already have and not have to work those long hours and have fulfillment and change people's lives for the better, or offer a product or service that does help them and get paid for it in the process, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you indeed? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't anyone do that? But I would say to you, probably 95% of the listeners into this show, probably more than 95%, because if you are living a life of abundance and enjoyment, I can't imagine that you'd be listening to these conversations on a daily basis because you're already there. Why would you sort of listen to it? But I would think that the majority of listeners out there are listening to you going, that's not my life. My life isn't playful. My life isn't providing value to people. My life is doing a job to pay the bills, and that's it.
So here's a question again for the listeners. What is abundance to you? For me, it's probably a very different answer. I thrive on minimalism. It's something that I learned through years of travel and moving from place to place and needing to be mobile. And at first, it seemed like everyone around me was accumulating possessions and I was accumulating experiences, which was great. But of course, you have that voice in your head saying, well, okay, I don't have that car, or I don't have a house of my own, for example. And it takes really knowing yourself. Again, it goes back to that. You deciding for yourself what is important to you, what your standard is for yourself, and what you're really striving for. And for me, in the end, I decided that I wasn't striving for that house. And the car, well, it's perfectly legitimate, especially living in Europe, to not have a car. You might not need one. So why feel obligated? Again, the word should is one to watch out for. Why feel obligated to work for something?
I promise.
Well, never say never. But again, why feel obligated to work for something that you don't actually care about? Wouldn't it be interesting if you focused your energy on working for the things that you do care about and providing for the people that you do care about, and letting all that extra stuff, the superfluous stuff that people tell you you should want and should need, letting all of that go? What do you think about that?
Well, no, you're preaching to the converted here. You really are. I've always been somebody that's kind of lived slightly away from the crowd, and on a simplistic thing, and I've mentioned this in a few episodes, I don't have a mobile phone in any shape or form, and I have fought against it for years and years and years. And people would say to me in my office, managers and stuff, oh, and we need to get you a mobile phone so that we can contact you out of hours. And I used to say, no, if it's out of hours, you're not contacting me. I'm not Barack Obama. You're not going to expect me 24 hours a day. And they used to say, yeah, but what happens in an emergency? And I used to go, emergencies don't happen in corporate land. You might think they do, but what's going to happen really, So I used to sort of fight against it. Now I look back on it, and was it me creating my own path, or was it me just trying to keep an element of control over my life? I think possibly the latter. And a lot of the things that I have done, I'm very minimalist. I don't have a lot of possessions. I quite like the fact that I don't own a watch, so that most of the time I have no real... I'm getting very good at looking at people's wrists upside down, I have to say, as they walk past me, so you can sort of pick up on the time. But all those kind of things that people have in their life about having to be there at a certain point and always having to be connected and always being able to have that channel of communication flying through to them, I don't have any of that. And I look at my life now and I can actually connect my own dots leading up to that. And it's uniquely me, and it's something I play to. So I think with the life of abundance that I'm looking for, I think it's the freedom, it's the ability to be able to, sit in a field in the middle of the afternoon just because I fancy doing it, because I know that I can structure all my life when I want to do it. The interview we're doing now at the moment, it's Bank Holiday Monday in England. It's my daughter's birthday. We've just come back from a dinner, family dinner and stuff, and now it's coming up to sort of 20 to 10 in the evening. So I've had a whole day, and now I'm doing my work because we've structured it in that way that it's suitable for you and it's suitable for me. That, to me, is abundance. Because I'd never had that before. It was always 9 to 5, 8 till 4, you had to be there at that certain time. And a lot of the time, I wasn't ready to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, Why did I have to work at 8 o'clock in the morning if actually I am better at working at 12 o'clock at lunchtime onwards, or 2 o'clock in the morning? It never made sense to me, that. I'm starting to rant there, Ginger.
A little bit. I'm getting that vibe from you.
Yeah, you're touching something inside me.
Clearly. But I think, again, going back to what you said, it's coming down to knowing what you define as abundance, right? And what you say is great for you is probably not the same as your listeners, which is perfectly legitimate. So I would encourage everyone who's listening to take maybe 30 minutes or longer if you can, and sit down, take out a pen and paper. It always works best to write things down and they're not swimming around in your head, and start asking yourself questions like, what do you need to be fulfilled? Or even break it down to, what do you need to be fulfilled on a daily basis? Name 5 things. And then
will people just come back with more money?
Yeah.
Well, would that be the standard one? More money? Because that's the solution to everything in people's minds, isn't it?
So perhaps that's the first solution, but then you have to ask, okay, why more money? As in, what will that money buy you? Because the money itself isn't really the point, is it? I mean, of course, we can use it for kindling or something for a fire, but it's just paper, right? In the end. So what's the purpose behind the money? What are you trying to buy with it? It's going to be used in some sort of an exchange.
I'm aiming to buy matches.
Matches.
Yes.
This is true. Yes.
Instead of kindling, just go out and buy matches.
But going back to the idea of breaking it down to what is it that truly fulfills you, and trying to incorporate as many of those elements on a daily basis into your life. And then again, forgetting the rest of it, the things that don't fulfill you, as much as you can possibly do this, eliminate them. Of course, everyone will have to make a compromise at some point or another, and especially if we have children involved or spouses or dependents in some way, shape, or form. Yes, you might have to make compromises in order to provide for them and care for them as you probably want to do. So it just goes down to that. What can you do to provide for yourself and the people around you that you care about? And that starts with being fulfilled, right? Because if you don't have happiness and fulfillment for yourself, how can you expect to provide that to others on a consistent basis? That's just not sustainable.
Well, one of the things that has come out in many of the conversations, Ginger, is peer groups, and surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are already doing the thing that you want to do, how important that is. Do you have any sort of suggestions how people who are listening to this and thinking, yeah, I'd really like to change my life, but, I've got to go to work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and I'm sitting next to the people that, in most senses, when you go to work, you wouldn't choose to sit with these people. You're just sort of forced to do it. Maybe 1 or 2 of them become friends and you sort of, hang around with them a bit, but the majority of people aren't. Have you got any suggestions how people can, start to create that momentum, start to surround themselves with like-minded people if they have got those daily restrictions?
It's a great question. And I don't know if you'll like the answer, because it can be uncomfortable at first. So my answer would be is to start being more open with those people that are around you. And what that means by being more open, I mean really talking about the things that matter to you. Because when you do that, you're opening the floor, you're giving the people around you permission to accept and resonate with that, and then give you that affirmative feedback that they too are into whatever you're into, or like-mindedness, or reject you, which of course is the uncomfortable part, potentially. And that's the easiest and most direct way, with the existing network or social circles that you already have, to start building closer circles of people who share whatever values you hold for yourself, or whatever interests or hobbies. It could be as light as something like playing squash. Okay, I love to play squash, but I never talk about it with my coworkers. Well, maybe I should mention that sometime, or could mention that sometime. And that gives your potential squash playing partner as a coworker, an opportunity to step up and say, okay, well, actually, I heard you talking about squash the other day. And I'm not really sure why I'm using that sport in this example, but you're British, so for some reason my brain goes to squash.
Cricket.
And I know, it's terrible. Well, regardless of whether it's squash or cricket, you've started talking about it, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it's being more vocal, and that's giving the people around you an opportunity to hear that voice and agree with it or disagree with it. And the people who agree with it will gravitate towards that. And that is definitely a snowball effect, or it creates a snowball effect. Might be a bit slow at first, especially if you're more timid about speaking out about whatever it is you're interested in. But as soon as you start, you'll notice that little coincidences or serendipitous occurrences start happening, and people drop into your life, or you might come across a blog or something like that, and then actually reach out to that blog owner, or someone might hear your conversation on the street and say, hey, actually, I was really interested in what you had to say. So it all goes back to the idea of you first stepping into the role of creating that space and being vocal about what it is your interests and passions and whatnot are. And then the people on the receiving end, the ones who are right for it, the ones who align with whatever it is you're putting out, they're going to step up. They will notice what you have to say, and they will reach out to you. So that's how the circles start to form. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And I think, that is brilliant advice. And as Ginger was saying, it's not going to happen overnight. It really isn't. And I did a similar thing, over a period of about 3 or 4 years, when I was saying to people, this is what I want to do with my life. And some people would go, yeah, go for it. And others would go, that's never going to happen. And so I kind of just cut them off, not dramatically. I'm never going to talk to you again. But I just kind of just cleared them away. And I ended up with a very small group of friends compared to the group that I considered as friends previously. But what I did get were positive, supportive people that could push me on to achieve. And it doesn't even have to be at work, does it, Ginger? You can join clubs in the evening. You can really start to, branch out and find like-minded people. And you're probably going to find even stronger characters that you resonate with if you do force yourself away from the workplace.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And it's all about being intentional, right? So when you do join that club, what's the purpose behind it? Why that club in particular? Is it because you think it'll bring you a bit of status? Or maybe it's more of a light reason, like, physical activity. I just want to play sport. But if it comes down to masterminding and exchanging ideas, you do want to be very intentional about it. And that comes down to first knowing what you're looking for. So
how do people, I know we keep harking back on this because I think it's just so fundamental. But if you ask a 5-year-old what they want to do with their life, generally they can come back with 3 or 4 answers, bang, straight off the bat. And they're normally amazing things like, I want to be an astronaut, and I want to be a president, and I want to be, a ballet dancer or whatever. But once you...
Oh, you too.
Yeah, I wear the shoes even now. It's bad on the back of my heels, but I'm getting used to it.
I'm sure.
But if you ask 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. That kind of focus. And I know it's a fantasy focus as a 5-year-old, but by the time it's 16 and that has come, it's kind of got lost somewhere along the line. I don't know where it's happened. Then you go into a job and then you start doing sort of roles and getting paid in that. And generally, if you ask people, what do you want to do? They're more likely to tell you what they don't want to do because they've already done it and they didn't like it more than what they do want to do. So how do people find the thing? Is it just reading blogs? Is it just about talking to people? Is it just about being, tunnel visioned? How do they do that?
So you brought up an interesting concept that the 5-year-old knows what they want and the 16-year-old doesn't. I would challenge that, actually. I would think or say that the 5-year-old knows just as well as a 16-year-old, and the 16-year-old is simply afraid to say it or afraid to commit to one idea because multiple ideas appeal, which of course is perfectly natural because we're humans and we're allowed to like different things. So how does one find what thing, or, in the case that it might be multiple things, fit for them? The best way is simply trial and error, and that's where people get stuck. because they find that they come to a point where it's not working for them. And then they have this thing come up inside feeling like a failure. And that's the point where people say, oh no, I've done something wrong, or it hasn't worked this time, and I don't know what to do next. And instead of simply saying, okay, I'm going to make a cut here and take what I've learned, all of that information, all of that feedback, even if it was negative stuff, you still learned. Take that and move to the next thing, the next job, the next project, the next relationship, and take that knowledge with you. It's simply the fear of failure that stops people from moving forward. And so if you think about your 5-year-old self and thinking about maybe your 25 or 35-year-old self, that's a lot of time for fear to build up, right? So you have to go through processes of clearing that out and getting back down to, well, okay, I'm still alive, I'm still learning, and this is a process. And that's really how you can make that jump over the gap of the chasm of fear, I suppose you could call it, into the next land of opportunity.
Because failures, they are frightening, aren't they? There's no getting away with failures. You put your heart and soul into something and it just hasn't panned out. And I certainly have had my fair share of failures. And what I'm doing now, I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I feel like I found my path. It just feels so right. And it's the first time that I've been really focused on one path, where normally previously I'd been doing a little bit of this and it hasn't quite gone where I wanted. Oh, then I moved on to something else and then I moved back onto it and stuff. Now I look back over the last maybe 5 years of doing a sort of online route, all these kind of little failures that I thought, or the things that didn't quite pan out, have actually been tiny little micro dots that have led me to this point. So I wouldn't have been here now without those. And if you get all the failures out of the way, you've got to hit success, haven't you? I don't believe anyone is just going to constantly fail. There's got to be an element of success at the end of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Completely 100% agree. And it also comes down to how you define success, right? So success might just be learning what doesn't work for you. That's huge, then you can filter that out the next time an opportunity comes around. And that's applicable to, again, career, relationships, family, everything, So it depends on how you define success for yourself.
How do you define success for yourself?
Am I happy? Am I at peace? And am I helping people around me and or the general world? And that goes down to my more humanitarian roots, I suppose. But it does start with me, which might be a selfish thing for some people, but I truly believe that I have to be coming from a place of happiness and fulfillment first. Otherwise, again, it's not going to be able to be sustained. Whatever I'm putting out into the world and however many people I want to help or change their lives or make the world a better place, all of these like cliche phrases, that can't happen if I myself am not in a good place. And so for me, being successful is being in that place where I am happy and I am fulfilled. And then the next step is creating whatever it is that benefits the people around me.
Because you're involved with some amazing stuff. We actually connected through a gentleman called Dan Adams, who appeared on episode 6 of Join Up Dots. And
yes.
Amazing guy. I've never met him personally, but I certainly resonated towards what he was saying. The passion and enthusiasm and the general niceness of him just kind of flooded out. You almost felt like reaching into the computer screen and giving him a hug somehow. I don't know why. He just had that kind of quality about him. But he is sort of creating the Higher Purpose Project, which I know you're sort of heavily involved in. And
yes.
My understanding of that, this is where sort of, I suppose, reasonably successful, some very successful people will come across the globe to meet at conferences and brainstorm and mastermind and support. And it's almost like building a high achieving family that is
yes.
across the globe. How powerful is that, first of all, as a project, and secondly, to you being involved in it?
Oh, that's it's fantastically powerful. And I don't say that lightly. when it comes down to what moves you forward and gives you momentum in life, or what gave me, personally speaking, momentum, it was the relationships that I made at the summit of the Higher Purpose Project that I attended this past January. And moving forward, I know that the people, I think it was about 50 people that were there, and I'm talking all walks of society, all demographics, different points in their life in terms of age range, and of course, industry, career industry. Those people have my backs. And those are deep connections. They're bonds that were formed through this wonderful situation, this retreat situation that Dan Adams helped create at the Higher Purpose Project. It's difficult to get into in so little time, but essentially, if you can surround yourself with those types of people who will have your back and who will connect you with maybe people that you need to meet, or resources that you might learn from, or suggest potential business partnerships, for example. Those are the people that are your family and supporting you, and they're also pushing you forward. And then you have the ultimate privilege of turning that around and supporting them. And it's an immensely powerful program, and I'm so grateful to be involved with it. And we're actually going to be having 2 more summits in this coming May in Colorado itself, so just a few hours away from Boulder. I'm very excited for it.
So how did you get involved with that? How did you first get in contact? Was it via Dan, or did you become aware of the project itself first of all?
Oh, so yeah, here we're joining up dots again, I see.
We are. This is what I do, you see.
I see, yes. It's quite clear, actually. So I met Dan Adams through the co-founder of the Higher Purpose Project. His name is Phil Drolet, and he is a coach for entrepreneurs. He's also based in Boulder, Colorado. And the 2 of them had founded the project back in 2012, the beginning of 2012. And so what Phil and I had in common was this huge interest in personal development. And I actually stumbled on his blog while I was still living in Germany. So again, joining up dots, I was looking into things that could move me forward in life and get clear on really what I wanted. And one of his articles popped up. I don't know if it was on stumbleupon.com or Google or something else. But in any case, I started reading his blog. Then a few months later, had an opportunity to write for his blog, and then continued writing for his blog. And through Phil, I met Dan and came to the Higher Purpose Project. So, and of course, through Dan, I came to you. So there you have it, joining up the dots.
So you can blame Dan for this connection.
Exactly, or thank him.
Your life was light and happy before this. So what I just want to sort of bring to an end before we put you on the mic and we do the sermon on the mic, which is the part of the show when you go back in time and you hopefully can give some advice to your younger selves, is where's your plan now then? So sort of going forward, as you say, you're in a very good place. Boulder's really good for you. The Higher Purpose Project's going great. You've got clients coming on board for your peak performance coaching. Where's your plan to take that?
It's interesting that we're having this interview on this day in particular, because I've actually just come back from the pilot launch experience of a new business similar to the Higher Purpose Project. And it is currently nameless. We're really in the pilot stages, but it was a 3-day adventure/personal development retreat in Utah. And so coming off of that, my plan moving forward is to continue building my coaching business, hopefully reaching many, many, many more people this year and helping them get to the next level in whatever they envision to be their peak levels in life. And then on the other hand, building this newer business. Again, we don't have a name yet, so I can't tell you one, unfortunately. But we had about 32 people for this pilot experience launch, and we'll be doing our full launch in the end of June in Colorado from the 26th through the 29th, and essentially building that up so that we have at least 6 trips this year. So that's the plan moving forward.
So how can people get in contact with you, Ginger? They're sitting out there thinking, this is the woman for me. This woman is going to change my life. I feel like I've been changed just in this conversation. So how can I get in contact with you if they feel that you're a person for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to find me would just be through my website. That's gingerkern.com. Kern is just Kern. And there is a contact form. Send something over, whether it's just to say hi or anything else. I'm here. You can find me, and I will gladly reply.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. And I hope there's somebody who's going to reply to you now, because this is part of the show when I'm going to play the music and leave you to become the presenter. And as I was saying beforehand, this is the Sermon on the Mic, when we send you back in time to really join up the dots and give your younger self a bit of advice. So the music's going to play, and when it fades out, I'm just going to remain quiet, and it's over to you. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
All right, so this is Ginger of the present moment speaking to Ginger of the past, let's say 15 years ago. And what I would say to you, if you're listening, is that you already have permission. And what I mean by that is permission to be daring, permission to be adventurous, permission to take risks, permission to really live your life how you want to live it. And so whatever it is that you have in your mind, whether it's traveling to far off countries or moving into different businesses or industries that you've never had any experience in before, just go for it. And that is my most important bit of advice to you. And good luck. You'll be fine. Don't worry.
And that's the advice to everyone, I think, isn't it, really? Just go for it, you know. Richard Branson says, screw it, let's do it, or something along those lines. And once you do take that action in your life and you take consistent action, some things, it's amazing what happens. It is truly amazing, but you've got to get that ball rolling.
Absolutely. I totally agree. It's proven time and time again in my own life and a lot of the lives of the people around me. So thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.
No problem at all. Ginger Kern, thank you so much for being on the show. And as I always say to all the guests, please come back in the future, because our histories are continuing to grow, so there's always dots to connect, and by looking up and joining up those dots, it's the best way to build our future. Ginger Kern, thank you so much.
Thank you.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.